Hey Dirt Magicians! Today you're joining me here in Trisha's yard, and we're here to chat all about powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is a disease that gets into our zucchini, our squash, and our cucumbers. And also, we've got a freebie for you called Common Diseases in Our Cucumber, Squash, and Zucchini Plants. So click the link in the description box below to download that freebie. And make sure to stick to the very end, where we discuss the difference between powdery mildew and its cousin, downy mildew. Also, if you're new to our channel, our mission is to help you learn from other gardeners, i.e. Dirt Magicians, by peeking over the garden fence. So let us help you learn by peeking. All right, so what is powdery mildew? Powdery mildew is a mold, and it looks like little white spores that almost have been dropped onto the leaves of our cucurbit family. So that is our squash, our zucchini, and our cucumbers, as I mentioned. But it can also affect the Fabaceae family, so that's our beans and our peas, and also the Solanaceae nightshade family, which is our tomatoes, our eggplants, and peppers as well. So this white mold actually feeds off of the leaf itself, taking away the nutrition, and over time it spreads out in a web of different spores that continue to feed and will slowly kill the plant. What's interesting though about powdery mildew is that it tries to keep the plant at least a little bit alive because it wants to keep feeding. However, over time, it can sort of really stop photosynthesis on a lot of our leaves, which then of course slows the growth of our different fruit. So being able to prevent and control it is super important to keep a delicious harvest all season long. In my opinion, the best thing we can do with powdery mildew is to prevent it. And the ways that we want to prevent powdery mildew are to eliminate wet, damp surfaces, because that is what powdery mildew loves. So we always want to water at the base of the plant. This is a great rule for most plants, but especially those in the cucurbit family that are really susceptible to it. We also want to plant these guys in a nice, sunny, open area, because if it's really shaded, it's going to be a lot moist and damp. And then lastly, we can actually prune some of these leaves out when it gets big and bushy like this to increase airflow around here. We don't want leaves touching like these two together because again, it can be a nice moist surface. So once we've kind of done as much prevention as we can, I live in a climate where we get so much rain, we live near the ocean, so humidity is kind of inevitable. So at some point in the season, powdery mildew just makes its way over here. So the way that I try to control it is when I first see it coming, like on these leaves here, I just want to cut out those leaves to prevent the spores from going to place. And I find getting that early, for me, is kind of enough control. Eventually, this will get covered in powdery mildew just because of where I live. So I kind of switch from cutting out anything that I see because I still need photosynthesis to just the worst plants. And I find that way I still get a harvest pretty late into the season and basically to the point where it's not warm enough to be producing fruit anyways. So it's kind of worked for me. A second strategy is you can do a second round of planting if you live in a wetter climate like I do. So I'll actually plant zucchinis a month after, and then I can switch them out, or I try and plant them in a different part of the garden just so that they're not immediately getting the powdery mildew, as it takes a while for the plant to be inoculated. I've worked in farms where we end up with fields of just white kind of dying plants, but we still get a lot of fruit out of it, and that's enough. Now, if you're really set on controlling this with some kind of a spray, there are a few options. I personally do not use fungicides because I will also then kill the really healthy fungus in my soil. So I personally don't recommend that, and a lot of these fungicides have sulfur, which can actually injure the plant as well. When I have had to use those in the past, I find I'm spraying every 2 weeks, so I'm kind of wasting a lot of money in that way too, and I'd rather just work with that rhythm of nature instead. Now there's a few home sprays which I've not tried, so please let us know in the comments if you had and how it went. So I can't speak to how effective they are, but it's been shown in research that both citric acid and lactic acid will help suppress these diseases. So to get that, some people will do a milk water solution or a baking soda solution to try and kind of address this. Please let us know if you've tried this. I'm so curious. And lastly, I've heard that neem oil works, but my one issue with neem is that it will also kill other beneficial insects and other insects on our plants that I want to keep around, like my pollinators and my predatory insects. So I don't really do that. Ooh, and something I completely forgot to mention, and I even have props for it, is that whenever you do any pruning for powdery mildew, or really any disease, you want to disinfect your pruners afterwards to make sure you're not passing the disease on to other places. So I use either alcohol, a bleach, or hydrogen peroxide to disinfect my pruners. And congrats, you stayed to the end of the video, which means you're going to learn about powdery mildew's country cousin. Hey there, pals! Downy mildew. Why you did a country accent, I don't know. So downy mildew is another type of mildew. It's a totally different sort of fungus, but it usually has white or brown dots on the leaf. It also causes drooping and yellowing of the leaves as well. So similar issues in terms of production. If we get it on our plants, we also treat it the same way. The other thing is it does also eventually build up a mold, but that mold is usually more of a gray-brown fuzz than white, and it's only on the undersides of leaves, whereas powdery mildew we find on both the front and the back sides of our leaves. But in terms of prevention, when I talk about pruning, it would be the same things. If you want to go chemical controls, it would have to be a different chemical control of some kind, a different fungicide. And because I don't use those, I can't really provide any recommendations because, again, using a fungicide means you're going to be hurting our soil organisms as well. All right, Dirt Magicians, that's the end of our video. If you learned something valuable, water at the base of our subscribe button and like our video, as it helps up-and-coming content creators like us. Also, don't forget, we have that amazing freebie for you about how to prevent, control, and identify common diseases in our squash, our cucumbers, and our zucchini. And we look forward to seeing you next time.